Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. One Wisconsin lawmaker said more than 60% of the state's fourth graders can't read or write at grade level. He took the Department of Instruction to task and set about changing how the state's reading teachers teach reading. Joining us today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, what happened this week in the Joint Finance Committee?
This is one of these times where at the State House, they take a really big step, but it looks rather perfunctory. That you're exactly right. State Rep Mark Bourne, who heads the very powerful Joint Finance Committee. These are the people who write the budget. These are the people who essentially control whatever direction that the legislature is going to take. You've got the Assembly, you've got the Senate, but this is a joint committee. And so any spending bills, any big policy, it all almost comes from JFC. And so the committee essentially approved a list of 4 reading curricula, the new lessons that schools across Wisconsin have to use. And it is because, as Representative Bourne said, depending on the numbers, somewhere between 60 and 70% of kids cannot read at grade level. The numbers are similar for math and science and social studies, but reading is the focus. And it is such a problem in Wisconsin that they passed a law that redefines how Wisconsin is going to teach reading. The whole focus now is going to be getting back to phonics and making sure that kids are on pace by the time they're in the 4th grade. Because if you're behind in the 4th grade, you're behind. You're behind in the 8th grade. You're behind by the time you get to high school. Then you'll graduate from high school and you will be behind in reading and writing for the rest of your lives. So the hope is let's get kids on track by the 4th grade, and then they have a better shot at staying on track through the rest of their experience. And the Department of Public Instruction is kinda on board with this plan. You got to remember that DPI is filled with lifelong teachers, lifelong education bureaucrats. They've got a lot of deep ties to teacher unions. And it's not that DPI wants kids to be illiterate. It's that if you admit we have a serious problem with how kids in Wisconsin read, then you're essentially admitting we have a serious problem with our teachers, that our teachers aren't doing their jobs. And so a lot of DPI's involvement here has been the sort of, okay, fine. And as they were going through this list of which of the reading lessons Wisconsin would move forward with, DPI had some suggestions. Well, maybe we don't want this. Maybe we should do that. Are you really sure we need to change? And without getting way too deep into the reading weeds, what happened was the Joint Finance Committee picked a panel of experts, and the panel of experts said, here are the reading lessons that we suggest. And so Joint Finance said, boom, done. Here are the 4 reading lessons that schools can use. If you don't want to use these 4, mazel tov. You can use your own, but you're going to pay for it, and the state's not going to reimburse you a single nickel. And so in his comments saying, I can't believe we're having to have this debate, Bourne said, look, DPI got us here. The people who work for the Department of Public Instruction are the reason why we have 60 to 70% of 4th graders who can't read at grade level, and the reason why Wisconsin's reading gap between black students and white students is literally the worst in the nation. And so with moderate, begrudging Democratic support, the state is now moving forward. This is going to have a huge sea change because coming next fall, start of the next school year, kids across the state of Wisconsin are going to completely change how they read with the hope that they will read better.
And not to put you on the spot, but what are some of the differences between how they were teaching reading and now with this new program, how they plan on teaching reading?
Yeah, from what I understand, again, I write enough about education to just know enough of the words to maybe get myself in trouble.
And to be dangerous,
but, yeah. But the big focus is eliminating 3 cueing and to move back to phonics-based reading. And for people who are our age, I'm 50 years old, phonics-based reading is pretty much how we learned how to read. There have been some changes over the years, and the idea is that now phonics-based reading is the popular way to go. That really opens up a debate as to, okay, well, phonics-based reading may work for suburban white kids, but what about kids who English is not their first language? Or what about kids in inner city schools? And you could spend we could do 5 podcasts just on phonics-based reading itself and the evidence that we have that it works. But those are two of the big things in the shadow of this. And you always got to remember this, whether it's Wisconsin or any of the other states that I think we write about at the Center Square. Whenever you start talking about changes to education curricula, whenever you start talking about changing what kids learn, there is this specter of both diversity, equity, and inclusion, political correctness, this sort of modern education move to different ideas, what they actually want to be teaching kids. And you also have the sort of shadow specter of teachers unions. And, well, we don't like the way these teachers are teaching, but we can't fire them because they're in the union. So we're going to have to change everything. And that's really where it is. But when we're talking about what's the big push, it is a super hyper focus on getting kids ready by the 4th grade. No longer originally this plan would have held kids back. If they were not reading at a 4th grade level by the 4th grade, they would have had to repeat and repeat and repeat till they got it right. The governor made sure that went away, but this is a hyper focus on 4th grade and a return to phonics-based reading.
Tennessee has a similar program that they do where they do, and I don't remember if it's 3rd grade or 4th grade in Tennessee, but you are held back. Now you get an opportunity in the summer to pass whatever test you have to take. And the majority of kids in Tennessee either get advanced or pass that test in the summer, but it's a real threat. It's not a paper threat. It's a real threat in Tennessee. So Democrats went along with this begrudgingly, but what were some of their objections? What were some of their worries?
They worry about one size fits all. And they worry that this is another unfunded mandate. But the question is going to be lawsuits. Wisconsin has a very disparate set of, public school systems that if you go to the WOW counties and you look at schools in Mequon or Arrowhead High School out in Delavan, some of the best schools in the state. And then you look at Milwaukee Public Schools. But here's the thing is it's the schools that are worse off that need the most help. That you can go into some of the affluent suburban schools and you've got 90-something% reading proficiency. You go into Milwaukee Public Schools and it's the exact opposite. You've got single-digit reading proficiency, which means, in a district like Brookfield, where my kids go, single-digit numbers of kids aren't reading at grade level. You go into Milwaukee, 90% of kids in Milwaukee Public Schools aren't reading at grade level. And so there is a fear that perhaps Milwaukee Public Schools or Madison, maybe Green Bay, some of the lower performing schools may sue the state over this unfunded mandate or over an infringement of local control. At this point, MPS has a whole bunch of other problems. I don't know that taking on the cost of a lawsuit against the state is their best strategy. But
well, if 60% of the kids in Wisconsin don't read at grade level when they're in the 4th grade, something has to be done. So we can tell that something's being done. We'll see test scores to see where we are. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Audible is a great way to gain access to an ever-growing selection of audiobooks. They've got what everyone's listening to, bestsellers, new releases, that story you've been waiting for. Follow the link in our show description to get 30 days of Audible free.